These beautiful people deserve somebody to look out for them. It just hurts that, what happened that awful evening.
Tonight, staying Vegas strong.
To see so many in one instant is something that we never thought would happen, and we never really knew exactly how we would begin to process that.
We ask, how does a community heal?
We've talked to federal disaster consultants who've been involved in the Boston Marathon bombing, Sandy Hook, Pulse nightclub, even 9/11.
What are the short and long-term effects?
Yeah, this kind of trauma, it happens to everyone. I mean, at least, if it happened to one, it happens to the whole family.
What resources are needed?
I think right now the concern is just getting people connected.
I'm giving you a call from the VegasStrong Resiliency Center.
And are there enough?
It seems like in a lot of ways there's a lot of things we don't know.
Exactly, but I think what we do know is people are going to need help.
Vegas Strong. We see it on billboards, on bumper stickers, t-shirts, and signs. Two simple words that unite and connect our community after the unthinkable. On the night of October 1st, 2017, a gunman sprayed bullets from a high-rise room on the Strip across Las Vegas Boulevard and into a mass of people who were dancing and simply enjoying themselves at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. 1 October became the largest mass shooting in the United States to date. 58 killed, hundreds injured, tens of thousands affected. Tonight we begin our look at how a community recovers. The needs, the fears, the support, the road ahead.
I live about 2 miles from here. I try to be here every day.
58-year-old Andre King spends most of his days at the Healing Garden in downtown Las Vegas.
I'm doing this because for myself, it's healing for myself for the tragedies I've been through.
Known to most as Brother Dre, he is the unofficial greeter, cleaner, and caretaker.
I must have hugged over 3,000 survivors since I've been here. And each one, each story is beautiful and remarkable.
At the Healing Garden, 58 trees represent each life lost at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Photos, handwritten messages, and mementos cover what's known as the Remembrance Wall.
A lot of people were hurting, a lot of devastated lives, and just wanted to do something to help.
The garden grew from an idea Jay Plegancool and his co-worker had the morning after the shooting.
On Monday morning, I was having breakfast with Daniel, who's my construction manager in the company, and we were just trying to figure out what we could do. How can we help? What do we have to offer? And it just didn't seem right to go about the day as business as usual, because everything changed again.
The city donated the land, volunteers helped plant, and within a week, what was initially conceived as a pop-up park became a place to gather, to remember, and to heal.
And it just seemed appropriate because that's why we were doing it, is to help people heal, to move forward. So it just became the Healing Garden.
For victims, it will take time to heal.
I don't think there's a step-by-step guide for how to move on from something like this.
Yet life is moving forward for 24-year-old Morgan Starnes. She is back at work as a social media manager at a Las Vegas-based PR firm.
I think I have done a pretty good job of getting back to normal.
On October 1st, Morgan and her best friend were at the concert, about 30 feet away from the stage. They ran and dropped to the ground and ran some more. Morgan lost her phone in the process. She fell on someone who had been shot. and ended up on a nearby runway with about 24 other people just trying to get away from the pop, pop, pop.
I don't think anyone that was there has ever been part of anything like that before. So I think it's different for everyone. I think everyone moves on at a different pace. I think everyone moves on differently. I think everyone takes different steps to move forward from a tragedy like this.
What's your guess on how long people will be affected by this?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, I think.
Kevin Schiller is the Clark County Assistant County Manager and oversees the VegasStrong Resiliency Center. It's a free and confidential resource and support center for residents, visitors, and responders affected by the shooting at the Route 91 Harvest Festival.
As you look around, you'll notice the design of the center has photos of memorials. It has photos of different components of the event. That was all very intentional. There was outreach done to Boston and to Orlando that had similar type recovery resiliency centers, and so we really tried to model it after that.
Why these photos? What are they supposed to do for folks who come here?
Well, I think in the simplest terms, there's really two things. There's the connection to the event, and in terms of that recovery effort, connection to other individuals. I think there tends to be a human response. When something like this happens, you don't want to think about it. And for victims and survivors, one of the things we have to make sure we're focused on is them and what their needs are. And one of the things we do know with trauma and events like this is trying to keep them connected and engaged. You know, something as simple as a photo and or something that ties them to the event that is remembered. Because as much as others may move on from the event and say it's over in kind of a simplistic fashion, many others aren't, and they're dealing with it every day. So it's part of that recovery process.
A process that staff at the Resiliency Center want to help victims through. But first, they have to find them.
Not that anybody in this town has forgotten about this, but can we talk a little bit about the numbers? How many people were there, where they are, that sort of thing? I know you have some general numbers. Give me those.
The first number really is you have an upwards of 23,000 plus victims and survivors that were affected by the October 1 mass shooting. When you break that down a bit, you get into about, from a local level, Nevada, about a 30% number of that total. When you get into California, that goes up to about 60%. And then the rest were spread across really the country as a whole, and then internationally also.
In Canada, there's some in Canada.
Yep, there's some in Canada, and that inherently is one of the challenges we have.
Right, that's the problem that you have, is why do you need to get in touch with them?
Obviously, with an event of this magnitude and the impact to those individuals, what we're really trying to do is do outreach to assist all those individuals in recovery. Providing services, coordination of services, and then eligibility is really one of the key components as a potential survivor or victim, making sure we get them eligible for those funds and those support services primarily within the first year.
It's not as simple as just everybody had a ticket. Can't you just get their name and address? It's not that simple, apparently.
No, and you know, if you go onto secondary sites tied to ticket sales, a lot of tickets are bought in lots. So they may have been bought in Nashville, Tennessee, but they're distributed throughout the country. So that's one of the challenges that we're dealing with. And then I think the second piece also is then, also at a local level, you had vendors, you had employees of those vendors, you have people that were managing in hotels. All of those components are all considered essentially survivors and victims, and trying to get outreach to them also.
Good morning, my name's Larea and I work at the VegasStrong Resiliency Center.
So staff at the Resiliency Center regularly makes phone calls to check in, reach out, and remind victims about timelines for benefits, such as the Nevada Victims of Crime program. Every person who attended the concert the night of the shooting, no matter where they reside, is eligible for assistance as long as they apply within 1 year.
Tell me the kinds of things that you cover.
Sure, the things that we cover are crime-related expenses that result from a violent crime.
Rebecca Salazar is the manager of the Nevada Victims of Crime program.
So things like medical bills, counseling, funeral, relocation, crime scene cleanup, home security. There are a variety of benefits that we pay.
The 5-page application asks for information about the victim, the crime, crime-related expenses, and other information.
In all of last year, you had about 3,000 claims?
About 3,000 applications.
Applications, okay. The October 1st event surpassed that?
It
Just
did.
that one event?
Just the one event. We've received about 4,300 applications so far.
And what are most of them seeking?
Primarily counseling for the majority, but we're trying to make sure that we not only reach everyone, but also reach all the injured so that we can take care of all their medical bills and follow-up care that may be needed. So the vast majority that we've received so far are counseling, but we're working on reaching everyone.
Okay.
The application can be accessed online, as well as at the Resiliency Center and other local nonprofits that work with people in trauma, like the Rape Crisis Center.
One of the things that we do with our clients is assist with the State Victims of Crime Assistance application. And it was something that our staff and volunteers, who wanted to help, I think everybody afterwards, wanted to do whatever they could.
Staff at the Rape Crisis Center were among the many who jumped in to provide assistance immediately after the shooting.
People have dramatically different experiences. Whether they have other forms of trauma in their background is going to very much color, their interpretation of that event.
And trauma is something Danielle Dreitzer works with every day.
It's an ongoing concern for our clients. There was certainly no excess of mental health resources in the community before this happened. And then to add in, all the folks that are looking for support, looking for help, and capturing someone at the time they're reaching out for assistance is a huge issue. And so when the resources and the connections and the access are challenged in any way, it becomes even more of an issue, because if you don't kind of capture someone in the moment that they're reaching out and in the way that they're reaching out, to where they either feel like, oh, nobody really cares, or, well, they don't have the services I'm looking for anyway. They're just gonna say, nobody really cares, I'm just gonna have to suffer through this by myself, and then they don't reach out again for help.
Making that connection after such trauma is a concern for many, including local law enforcement.
I'm sure you've talked to, and your staff here have talked to many officers. What's your concern for them and their mental health?
There is stigmas and barriers associated with seeking help. And so I think my concern is that we may have some that are really hurting and in need of support, emotional support, but we keep it all contained. And so I think right now our primary concern is just connecting people that really need to be connected.
Lisa Hank oversees the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's Police Employee Assistance Program, otherwise known as PEAP. It's a crisis intervention and counseling program that offers peer-to-peer support to officers and their families.
In the general business community, I feel like most every company I know, large company, has an employee assistance program, but for Metro officers, it's vastly different on the kind of issues and things that they're going to see on a daily basis. Tell me about the difference.
Absolutely. The exposure, the level of exposure for first responders on a daily basis, it's probably not normal. Day to day, you're seeing the worst of the worst. Every day they are interacting, with people who are hurting, responding to calls that some people are running the opposite direction from. And that's why we call it what would be cumulative stressors. It's constant, consistent exposure to things that are simply not normal.
That's on a daily basis. And then there are things like October 1st, the shooting, which is something that many people never imagined would happen on the Strip in this town. Tell me about that effect on officers.
That's tough.
Yeah.
As much as it's it's something that you just cannot even imagine. I think you could sit and begin to think about, okay, how would I respond? What would I do? How would I handle this? And you create different scenarios in your mind. But I really do believe October 1st was so vastly different, you know, almost, it's just very unimaginable.
I understand that officers are meant to go into a situation and gain control and take care of it and that kind of thing. Tell me what are the specific reasons that they just would not want to talk to someone even who is part of Metro?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they?
You know, I think that it's just with first responders in general, I think they care for others. And I think the thought of maybe, just maybe someone having to care for them is very uncomfortable. I think that there are some fears about where would the information go, concerns about who might learn of my situation, confidentiality issues, where will this, how will people perceive me? Will I still be respected? Will I lose my job? Will people believe that I am still capable of doing my job? And really, we have to begin to change that mindset. We have to begin to change the culture.
When we talk about the long-term after effects, if someone were to ask you, you're in this line of work and you're dealing with these people that were so directly affected, what do you tell them about that? Do you know all of the after effects of this shooting?
Again, case by case, and we don't know from one person to the next the impact, the true impact that this event had. It could be one event, it could be cumulative events, but obviously the exposure to any sort of traumatic event can cause devastating results professionally and personally, from divorce, absenteeism, sick leave use, post-traumatic stress, sickness. There are so many different things, excessive drinking. And so we don't know what this is going to look like as of yet. But it is my hope that we're able to really connect people early on to get the services that they need so that they can properly process not only the event of October 1, if need be, but also the cumulative stressors that they are exposed to day in and day out, ultimately, so that they can have a healthier career.
The next thing that I saw in that moment was Metro officers that didn't hesitate.
Glenn Simpson was at the Route 91 Harvest Festival that night, working the event for Community Ambulance when he first heard the shots.
For many weeks following the incident, Sunday at 10:05 p.m. was a difficult time. There's times when I don't think about it, but there's probably more times often than not when some of the noises that I heard that night, some of the visuals that I saw that night are so ingrained, and I see it, I hear it, and it makes it difficult. You know, I work for an organization that is supportive of its employees. We're a family here, and even to this date, we're constantly checking in on each other to make sure that mentally we're in a good spot.
Community Ambulance offered counseling to its employees, time off if needed. They also gathered all who were there that night for a group photo that now hangs in the company's main lobby.
Every face in that picture has a story, and months later, I'm still learning what some of those stories are. And although difficult to hear some of the stories, they also warm my heart, knowing that these employees that night in their polo shirts in their pants, no protective gear, had a decision to make. And all of us chose to stay amidst the more than 1,000 rounds that were fired that night. There was a bond that was created that night. It's a bond that will never be broken. I may go do something in the next 10 years away from this industry, but on that anniversary, whenever it's talked about, there will always be 20 faces that return to me. There will always be an organization that I knew and I know had my back, and there'll always be a community that supported us the way they supported us post that incident.
That support and understanding, experts say, is key.
What is the recovery period?
It's as long as it takes, different for each individual.
Monique Cox is a counselor who has been working with victims at the VegasStrong Resiliency Center.
When I've worked with grief, probably it's somewhere around a year, 6 months to a year. But with this, I could never say, oh yeah, you're going to be healed at this point, because even after a year, well, it's New Year's Eve and all these things going on in the commotion. If you're out in a crowd, it could really be a setback, and you kind of have to. It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, depending on the triggers. So it depending on how bad the trauma was. This kind of healing from such a severe trauma takes quite a while, and not to be too hard on yourself or why am I not healed yet? It's like, what, just take it as it comes, and you'll get there when your psyche is ready, and when your self inside is ready, and it will happen, but it will take longer than most people ever want to have to wait.
That's probably also a message for family members and friends
yes.
to keep in mind.
Yeah, and especially those that have never been in something like this, you really can't even imagine what it's like, or even, you can try to understand, but until you're there and it happens to you and happens through you, it's just, really there's no words to say. It's a whole nother level of reality and fear. And so I think it's so important that the people, they mean well, but things like, it's been enough time, you need to do this, you need to get back on the horse. It's like, well, no, we just need to listen, and say, how are you now? It's been a year, but how are you really? Rather than trying to have expectations for the people to be all better.
What's your concern for the people that haven't accessed services yet, especially therapy? Right.
My concern is always that, I don't want them to get stuck. I wouldn't want them to get stuck in the fear, stuck in the depression, to be always living life looking over their shoulder and feeling like they can't now move forward.
We want to avoid seeing trauma on top of trauma.
At the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, help is also available.
I think we'll see issues relating to family issues, housing issues, and financial issues, because those are areas that people deal with every day. And also employment issues as well. So if you lose your job, you've lost income, then you can't support your children, you can't pay for your housing, and then you start having debt issues. And so likewise, if you are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder or anxiety or stress, you might have trouble in your marriage or with your children, or the children could potentially have trouble in school. So I think all of it is just interrelated, because it just has to do with things that people deal with every day.
Christine Miller says the center now has a representative at the Resiliency Center to help victims identify and navigate through legal issues that may come up.
I think our services will be needed more as time goes on, especially as there's anniversary dates, memorial dates, if there's any other events in the community or the country that trigger. I can't imagine what it must be like for someone who is suffering because of what they've been through.
It feels so like it happened so long ago, but at the same time it feels like it happened yesterday.
For concert goers like Morgan, the healing comes in different forms.
My best friend and I, the one that I went to Route 91 with, about a month after everything happened, I went down to visit her and we got matching tattoos of cactuses which are, it's a life form in the middle of the desert, which is kind of a wasteland. And they're a very strong plant, and they kind of symbolize survivorship.
Permanent reminders of that October 1st night.
I think about her, I think about what we've been through, I think about what we've been through together, and I think about how far we've come from everything. Sorry.
And as the days and weeks go by, we reflect on how far our community has come.
Well, a lot of survivors come just to be able to, take their first giant step to healing.
As well as how far we have to go.
It's VegasStrong with me, and I love Vegas, and I'm proud of my city.
We've put the contact information for all of the resources you saw in this program on the Vegas PBS website. That's vegaspbs.org. You'll find additional video content online as well. Our thanks to those who shared their stories and their expertise for this special, and we thank you for watching.